thank both of you. If you want to have a show more on astrology, I'll just take questions. I don't have to show any more charts or anything. I'd be happy to do that too.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. You did a great job.
Live from Roswell.
Yeah.
Broadcasting to you live over the Paranormal Radio Network from sunny Roswell, New Mexico.
Thank you, Michelle.
If you were here with us before this very last break, you were actually hearing a rerun. But now I am officially live for this final portion of the program on April 20th. 2008, with guest Joseph Palermo from St. Louis, who's coming up in just a minute to discuss with us a film he's made on the chupacabra creature, as well as a recent trip he made to Florida to film with Lightworks, a.k.a. the production company behind the History Channel's television series Monster Quest. But if you were really digging that previous interview rerun, though, we have many of our previous programs archived for you there, just for your listening pleasure, thanks to the miracles of modern technology and the hard work of our producer, Joe Montaldo. And you can hear the rest of the program we were just running by visiting www.livefromroswell.com and going back through my archives to April 4th, 2008, just a couple weeks ago. And you'll be able to hear the last part of that interview with the retro speakers, Ralph Ring, and one coming up with Alexander Bruce, who will both be where I'll be next weekend. I'm helping to MC live third annual Retro UFO conference in live over the Paranormal Radio, which is kind of in that Joshua Tree area. I really hope that if you're anywhere near this area, you can make plans to join myself and many others like Adam Gorightly and Nick Redfern, Greg Bishop, and Alexander Bruce out there in the sunny desert environment where George Van Tassel built the Integratron years back. He himself hosts some of the most far out UFO and space conventions, which back then drew thousands of people to this very same location in previous decades. The full information on that event is online at www.retro.com, and there's also a prominently displayed banner on livefromroswell.com if you have any trouble spelling retro. But once again, I'll be there myself, so I look forward to meeting any of our listening audience in Atlanta next weekend, April 26th and 27th in Atlanta. And hey, while you're on livefromroswell.com, I wanted you to know also that I have a link right now posted under Joe Palermo's files that I think many of our listeners coming especially interested in. It's the trailer for the new X-Files movie that's coming out this summer, July 25th. The article I'm linking to is the first one I saw, but it's going on about how lame they think the title of the movie is. This X-Files 2, I want to believe, reuniting both David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson on the big screen. Did I say Gillian? Gillian. Now the movie title is not totally a lame name, I don't think, but for those who have been anxiously awaiting it, I will warn you, in case you haven't read a lot of the press on the movie and the months that it's been in the working, that this particular movie does not, in fact, allow, or doesn't follow that familiar alien conspiracy story arc that helped make the reference so famous. The AP reports that the script and the plot are very tightly held secret. In fact, even the cast is having to read the script in locked rooms with video cameras to make sure they don't leak out. But anyway, this upcoming movie is a standalone episode that hopefully they say newcomers will be able to get without actually having been followers of the series. But basically, it's like one of their classic monster-looking episode files that also help to make the series so famous. And, well, speaking of Monster of the Week, I honestly can't think of a better segue for our guest tonight, Joseph Palermo, who is well known as an independent paranormal investigator and documentary filmmaker. I'd have himself spent more than a little time unwrapping the most famous monsters of our time, uniting both Bigfoot and the Chupacabra. You can join in the fun tonight. Call us right now with your toll-free with a question for Joseph at 877-786-0562. That number's on livefromroswell.com. Or send me your questions via email and talk to me at livefromroswell.com. So welcome once again to the program, Joseph.
Hello, guys. How are you, my friend?
Very good. Very good. You doing okay there?
I'm doing all right.
Okay. It's nicely reported that the script and the plot are very tightly held in the St. Louis County area. So I'm doing okay. Hey, you didn't feel an earthquake this week, did you?
You know what? I didn't feel it the way a lot of people did, because I have a trailer, and when I woke up, it was probably 4:30 in the morning, or whatever time that was, and it was like wind was hitting the glass of the trailer, and it owed any vibration. I just thought it was a thunderstorm.
I honestly can't think of a better segue for our guest. I did that in a tornado once in Nashville.
Really?
Yeah, I was dead in the middle of the tornado almost, it turned out, and I just thought it was wind had rolled over and went back to sleep. In the middle of the afternoon on my couch.
But apparently this particular earthquake reminded a lot of St. Louis of the earthquake of 1988. And I was in Cal, and I do remember that because it was during the day, and we felt the house begin to shake, and literally the chest of drawers walked across the bedroom. How are you, my friend? Very good. I was looking at it. I didn't know what to think. The furniture stands here.
Thus launching your career as a paranormal investigator.
There you go.
Well, it probably goes without saying, but you were probably an X-Files fan yourself, huh?
Yes, the way a lot of yes, I was. I remember the excitement that was going on here in the Louis area about this new show. And the premiere with a UFO or alien show. I don't remember exactly what happened there, but man, I just that really began the new era for
I did that with a tornado once in Nashville. Well, you, all that you do, kind of probably like watching yourself on television. I just thought it was wind.
Well, it would be nice to have the person at FBI agent with you if we get into places, but yeah, kind of sort of.
Do you think that what I was talking about, the title, I Want to Believe, is a lame name for an X-Files movie, feature film?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question, because when I write the script, I begin from the title, the story comes out. So it really depends on what the context of the script is. I don't, does it grab me and make me want to go see it? Not exactly.
That's launching your career.
You know, we all know that Mulder did have that poster in his office. I want to believe. So, you know, I think if you're an X-Files fan, you're going to go see it.
Yeah, X-Files 2 is probably enough to grab everybody to want to go see it.
Sure, exactly.
The good thing is Mulder sleeps through an earthquake.
Oh, goodness. And did I hear you right that they actually have cameras in the acting room? Is that really?
In the screenwriter's room, there's an article I've linked from Live from Roswell below your bio, and it has a link inside quoting Chris Carter, the more official AP news story, and they have the cast and the screenwriters actually had to go into this room with one copy of the script and video cameras were used. That's what it said. I'm not quoting correctly, but I read it earlier today.
Boy, that is a
yeah, like you said, you're a filmmaker. You don't want your spot now.
Exactly.
So, actually, your film much more involves, I guess, monstrous investigation. Most known right now for your chupacabra research, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. The documentary, correct. Title of it is Chupacabra. So, I think if you're an X-Files,
oh, that's much better than I want to believe. Yeah, X-Files.
Well, and I gave it that title because we were the that went on the expedition led by Mark Davenport. We were really the first ones from the States anyway on the scene that they actually have, and the interviews that we got, we actually captured the true essence
in what screenwriters were doing. An article I linked from Live from Roswell,
and it wasn't
bio, and it has a link inside quoting Wild and Carter on their own official AP news story, and they have the cast
that's why I chose it, because we were there at the beginning and
actually had to go into this room with one copy of the script
from the beginning. So they get all the stuff that there was
correctly, but I read it earlier today. And you recently got some airtime just as an expert effort on the feature with another sponsorship right now.
Yeah, there is a program
actually you
produced,
I guess the name of that production right now for your
KP, they're the ones who designed the series Monster Quest on the History Channel. And they contacted me. First they got a hold of Mark Davenport. Because Mark actually still has some hair samples that we collected in the field back in 1996.
Now I was curious what he actually brought to the field that brought him in.
That was it.
Semi-retired.
He's the man that got that. And I can only presume there was some conversation about what, do you have any video of you doing this or whatever? And that was then where he gave him my name. And one of the producers called me, myself, and said, yeah, we're doing this. He introduced the program to me, Monster Quest, and said, we're doing a show completely on the chupacabra, and we understand that you've got video footage from your expedition. I said, I sure do. And I'd love to be able to take a look at it. And I got them an online copy to begin with, and they asked me for a higher broadcast quality, which I had. And then it became a question of would I like to be on camera? Would I be interested in being on camera talking about it? I said, sure. And part of the reason that they began broaching that subject with me was because Mark Davenport, as much as I hate to say this, the man is dying of cancer. And they weren't sure that he couldn't take a plane. They didn't know if they would be able to get him to New York or San Antonio, where they were first starting shooting the interview. And they asked if I would be willing to go on if Mark was not available to do it or whatever. And we're recording my life. And they talked with Mark, not his blessing on it. And then as it turns out, in conjunction with shooting another episode in Pensacola, Florida, where Mark lives now, they had two Marks. They had a crew that could actually go to Mark's home. So they made arrangements for me to fly down to Pensacola and be there to do the interview with both of them. And it was so good. Online Mark, and his wife, Leah. God bless them. And they keep trying. They're there. Leah is doing, she's just, Mark always referred to her during the shoot as Dean, and she's well deserved for that. She is taking care of Mark to the absolute best of her ability. And, it was just so neat to be able to see them again. I haven't seen Mark since 1999. The best that they can. The interview went pretty well.
And what is but you're definitely one of the experts in the field of chupacabra research, no doubt about that. Is there anybody you put even higher than yourself, honestly, that you look up to or you want to be, or you want to be like when it comes to knowing and filming or talking about chupacabras?
Well, the two people, along with Mark and I, that would have equal or greater knowledge, one would be Jorge Martinez, who is a geologist from Puerto Rico, and God knows he's there. He was the one that guided us to the Witness of Science when we were there on the expedition in 1996.
And he's featured in your documentary.
Yes, he is, very prominently. Very prominently. Not only the translator, but was able to share some accounts from eyewitnesses that we were not able to get to. He's a great guy. I would love to be able to go back down there. If I get the chance to go back down to do, Let's Begin 2. No, there is a late title.
The legend continues.
I would hope to be able to connect up with him. And in fact, the producer, I understand that this is after the interview process. I got
filming and talking about
He did a spectacular job of recording the chupacabra picture back in 95. In fact, it was part of her running commentary with Art Bell, for your listeners who know who Art Bell is, and
I've never heard of it.
that actually made me decide to accept the position of official videographer on this expedition. Yes, he is. Because when I was told about the chupacabra in November of '95, and this was through my late friend Bob Buck, who was also on the expedition. Through him, because he had gotten me back to illustration of what this creature was purported to look like. And
The legend.
to me, it looked ridiculous. It looked like a draft for some B-movie horror movie. You know, like, you've got to be kidding me. Body of a kangaroo, head of a gray, legs of that, for some eyewitness accounts, could almost be bird legs. Spectacular job. It was like, okay, somebody just threw a bunch of props, threw them up in the air and landed, and that's what they wound up with. So I got introduced to it through Bob and that illustration, and I was listening
I've never heard of it.
on the radio, and I was reading about it, you know, Linda is usually, she's usually going after something worth going after, and certainly with the animal mutilation being part of her career, this fell into that because chupacabra was, responsible for not just pets, but many agricultural animal pets. So, and thus the name chupacabra, goat stalker, because the first victims found were goats.
That's the translation of the word chupacabra, right?
Correct. That's the translation of the Spanish word chupacabra, goat stalker. Right. So, so if you see something online that has Jorge Martinez's name attached to it, or Linda Morales' name attached to it, I pay attention to it.
And did you spend any time interacting with her?
No, our paths have not been able to cross regarding the chupacabra. I was permitted to watch a video of one of her presentations on news that you're exhibiting, where she talked about the chupacabra. What was something in contrast where she got what she interviewed. One of the same eyewitnesses that usually is going after something worth going after. Right now, certainly was not dealing with that item, but there was a discussion that he was back to look at that. And of course, an eyewitness account, you're going to have some discrepancy, because not everybody is going to have the exact same details in chupacabra shows, but in general, they'll make detailed descriptions about how this creature operates, its MO, what it does to animals. Of course, now that there's been the fallacy. I'll tell you this was funny during the interview process. I guess they had about 45 minutes of tape on me at this point. And the producer is saying, okay, now tell us about how the animals were drained of blood and how they were attacked. And she's waiting in anticipation. And I'm wincing on camera going, well, that's kind of a fallacy. She's like, what are you talking about? I said, well, the animals weren't drained of blood. According to the veterinary that did the necropsy on the animals, there were some that had a lesser amount of blood, some that had the same amount of blood, but none of them were drained of blood. And her face fell. She's like, shoot, that takes the whole thing out of the story. I said, oh no, you don't know.
We didn't fly you down here to tell us that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I went on to tell her, I said, no, you don't understand. That if the animal was just drained of blood, okay, there might be that, but you don't understand what they found when they did the necropsies on these animals. The weirdness is what happened on the inside of the body. What are you talking about? I said, well, for example, Dr. Soto pulled out a rabbit, or told the
anybody that has a product, event, or service you want people to be hearing about on this program, you visit livefromroswell.com and click on the link near the top that mentions audio, commercial, and banner ad opportunities. I got my plug-in.
There you go.
For the listening audience, a necropsy is when you examine a dead animal, and it's like an autopsy. Okay, get back to really what you're seriously saying. The esophagus.
The esophagus of this rabbit was gone. The only thing that I can think of was that if in fact it was this creature. Now this is another thing that this show on this monster show on the History Channel is going to be presenting, is that not all descriptions of the chupacabra are the same. One of the questions I was asked was, did I think this was the same creature, or was this several different creatures that were all being called chupacabra? And I said, no, I don't think it is, because there are very physical descriptions
Our listening audience,
of this
always
creature.
say is
Some people describe it strictly as this huge
and
mass.
they've got money to burn.
Some people have
Anybody that has
described
a
it
product,
more
event, or service
with dog-like
you want people to be hearing about on this program.
They're also bringing into this program the Elmendorf, Texas creature.
The what creature?
The Elmendorf, Texas creature. Somebody, there was
It's like a dead possum that's a dead animal.
The picture that I saw seemed like esophagus, blue-gray canine of some sort. But not anything like the illustration that we got from Puerto Rico. So you've got this, people calling this a chupacabra. And
How did it?
yeah. And the problem that we wind up with is people would go out, either morning or night, find their animals dead, and immediately scream chupacabra. Well, we don't know that it was chupacabra. When the producer asked me where all the chupacabra has been sighted, and I said, well, there's this report, Miami, Florida, interview on camera with him.
Also one guy.
And it's been a month before that there had been a 1,500-pound bull brought down by chupacabra.
He was getting
Whatever this thing is, it has a power over animals. He was receiving this incredible power over animals. Now you're asking me what evidence, what
right,
see about that. Well, primarily the puncture wounds, and I looked for the eyewitness description. There were some animal killings in Miami, Florida, where somebody had been able to take cast footprints, and these were all, I believe there were 4 or 5 toes. Classic chupacabra creature only has 3 toes and 3 fingers.
So you can kind of establish yourself as
we pretty well know if you're looking at something that leaves a print of forepads, probably a dog or some canine. That would have been able to kind of identify what animal it might be from that. So I looked for the evidence that indicates similar creatures as in footprint. If it's not that, you can probably pretty well figure out what did kill the animal. Another weird thing, MO, is that the animals that are killed by chupacabra don't go into rigor mortis. Ever. There's something, blood just coagulates. There's some agent usually introduced into the blood that prevents the coagulation process. Let's see what else.
Assuming we're talking about a predator, how would that chemical agent, enzyme or whatever, how would that benefit the predator?
I don't know necessarily that it does. This could very well be simply a byproduct of what this creature does. I don't know. I mean, one of the theories. Okay, for example, if you're able to picture the surface skin of an animal in a puncture wound, let's say near the abdomen, when Dr. Soto would begin taking the layers of skin away, you trace that hole into the animal, and suddenly leads to 4 other holes, say in a 1-inch square, beneath the surface of those tissues. In each one of those 4 holes, one may lead to the heart muscle, when there are strips of the heart muscle that have been removed. One may lead to the liver, where strips of the liver have been removed. It's almost like a hole is made in something. This thing is supposed to have a ton of
Assuming we're talking about a predator, how would that?
I like it to an anteater, but other people have liked it to a mosquito tongue. Something that's completely flexible. And once that initial puncture wound is made, then this flexible, whatever it is, can go into that puncture wound and then begin, and I'm not saying this is exactly what it does, begin drilling, if you will, into the animal to find the organs that it wants pieces of.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because I use the word predator actually pretty loosely, I realized a second ago. But it's like very selectively taking out just certain any delicacies or muscles or whatever. One of my listeners says those puncture wounds is where they stick the straw in. Someone who listens to the program now.
Well, who knows? Maybe some of them do carry straws. I mean, don't know. Haven't had any eyewitness accounts to that, but, we're dealing with the unknown, so who knows? he deals with tiny muscles or organs and extracts that muscle, heart, liver, all those organs, tissues of any other predatory animal that we know of. I have no idea why they would kill. I mean, it kind of takes us back to the animal mutilations that were going on here in the United States back in the early to mid-70s. Why are all these cows? Well, and it wasn't just cows. That's why they were called animal mutilations. Linda Moulton's house started after her, if you will, paranormal career that way. With her story on the, I think it was a cult. I think it was in Colorado, where she was working on television station. There's a story on that. And then got flooded with letters from all over the country about other animals that had been killed and mutilated and they were all in the same fashion. But it was cattle, it was horses, it was dogs, it was cats, pretty much anything with four legs. And now we see this, well, we saw, I'm not sure how much things are going on in Puerto Rico. I haven't been in touch with anybody there in a very long time. But now we got a similar situation that only common creatures. What the devil is it? Where did it come from? What's it doing here? How did it get hurt? And why is it only taking these specific items from animals?
I have no idea.
Yeah. So
you're the expert. Why?
I'm the expert.
You're perplexed.
Expert is such a funny term.
Right.
Expert implying that one knows everything there is to know about a subject. Now, I could, if I tried really hard, I might be able to be an expert in my field of martial arts, but I got it at this point. And chupacabra, boy, we have truly such limited information on this creature. And I think that's part of the reason why you wind up in a situation like you do in Elmendorf, Texas, where this mangy, pale bluish canine is raiding the chicken coop, and somebody manages to shoot it and yells chupacabra. Pretty much anything with four legs, because they don't know. The information has not gotten out enough in the populace to understand what, quote unquote, at least the original chupacabra looks like, does, what its MO is in the situation. So, and I'm really hopeful that Monster Quest will do a good job with this. And it's going to air July 13th.
Oh, that was one of my questions for you.
Okay.
This is going to be on TV on History Channel, right?
Correct, on the History Channel. I'm hoping that it's international. So you're because I really want this information. Expert is a funny term.
Right.
Expert implies it could very well be that there is no legitimate chupacabra activity going on. It's not being reported. I might be able to be an expert in my field of martial arts. That's one of the issues that you have in almost any paranormal topic arena, especially ufology. Reverend today is calculated that only 10% of all UFO sightings are reported. Now, of course, with YouTube, with some of these video sites, you're getting some real interesting stuff being posted. But then again, there's not any particular investigation going on with it.
Yeah, you also hear there's some really good CGI gets posted on YouTube.
Exactly. That Hades UFO video clip is one of the big ones with that. Now, going along those lines, I think we're kind of deviating off the topic a little bit. But
that was one of my questions.
okay, I'm real curious about this dragonfly-like drone thing that's the international. The last year or so.
Yeah, I mean, some pretty clear photos and drawings and stuff like that coming out. Awesome. 2008, you'll be appearing on the program Monster Quest.
That's correct.
And that entire program, if I'm not mistaken, is dedicated to the Chupacabra.
That's my understanding. My understanding. And some of the footage from my documentary will also be
and that was kind of the second thing I wanted to make sure that you could plug and tell about is about your documentary. Where do we find that? How long is it?
You will find it. I periodically play it on my internet television station, my website at www.its-dms.com. Those listeners that want an easy link, they can go to your website, to my information, and I have a link up in that.
Right, yeah, livefromroswell.com. Joseph Palermo is in big blue letters. And that link will take you there.
Yes, yes. And from that homepage of my website, select the city that is closest to you. I've got viewing screens for the 50 top
July 13th, 2008, you'll be appearing on the
Pick the one that's closest to you, and that will take you to a view screen.
Entire program, if I'm not
Click on the image to start the live stream video going on. We're doing live streaming now. And my documentary, like every few days that I'll run a tape loop that includes Chupacabra Celestia on it. And that's a free view.
Where do we find that?
If you people wish to purchase a downloadable copy, they can go to itsdms.com and email me, and I can send them information on how to do that. And I think it's like listed at $3.50.
Okay, so for $3.50, it's not like you've got to spend $24.99 on a DVD.
Well, no, I mean, what I've done with the pricing is because it's a digital download, I don't have any inventory. I don't have any copies. I'm taking the manufacturing costs that typically go along with a DVD don't exist. So I'm able to give it, because I want people to be able to have a copy, to be able to, those who are interested, to have their own copy that they can study. And that's what I'm trying to make it affordable to anybody and everybody, because we get people visiting from all over the world to the website. And what seems like almost too good to be true price here, maybe,
huge if you're, if you're working in a sweatshop for 50 cents a week,
Exactly.
So, okay, so it's linked from livefromroswell.com, ITS dash, finish it for me.
Oh, sure. DMS, DavidMichaelStevens.com.
Okay. And again, do email me, but so I can announce to people. History Channel, July 13th, the program will be Monster Quest. But I definitely, if you remember to email me, I'll definitely plug it over to you.
I will do that. Absolutely. Absolutely. I want as many viewers to be able to see this, because I'm going to be very anxious to see what additional information they dig up from their trip to Puerto Rico. The producer did mention early on that he wished that they had the budget to take me with them down there. They just didn't have it. So it cost a lot.
Oh, well.
It's a beautiful place to visit. It really
just take it from someone who's actually been on the History Channel for like 30 seconds and they hacked what I was saying into pieces. Visit alienstranger.com for my whole comment on that. So you can get out of contact if you're... But you'll love it when people come up to you and start saying, hey, I saw you on TV last week. Okay. That'll be the bomb.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun. You know something interesting, guy? Everybody that I have talked to here in the area that has seen Monster Quest, and most of the people are somehow involved in paranormal research, and again, they all love it.
Email me, but
they say it's very balanced. It's truly not pro or con.
I definitely you remember
viewers all the time. And it wasn't that long ago that many people in ufology were often doing any of these programs again because of the end result. This is the first television show that I've heard
more. We are actually at the end of the program, so I want to thank you for joining us here tonight, both Joseph and our listeners. Like I said, I'm out of town next weekend at retroufo.com, so I hope anybody that's out there near the Landers, California area can join us out there. Come up, say hi to us at the table. I'll be emceeing, and in future weeks, we're going to have people that are going to be appearing in Roswell this summer, probably including Mike Murrah, who with Richard C. Hoagland is co-author of the book Dark Mission, discussing on this program, and in Roswell this summer, the occult history of NASA. Well, I'll have a date for him very soon once we get it pinned down. But looks like that's the end of the program. It was short. Thanks for listening, and thank you especially, Joseph, for being on.
Absolutely. It wasn't that long ago. I once had many people in college or officers doing any
Sometimes we're UFO themed, sometimes we're paranormal, politics, and or religious in nature. Sometimes we're light and fun, but tonight is not one of those nights. As my guest tonight is Doug Briggs, and our topic is healing from the effects of satanic ritual abuse and mind control, which often... Sorry about that, wasn't me. This often leaves people suffering from dissociative disorders, such as multiple personalities, and Doug works in healing people that have issues and problems with that going on, as well as educating others that it is a real topic. Quite a serious topic, and I'm sure we're going to touch on some kind of dark subjects as we go along. And I would like to remind you, listeners, you can participate in this discussion and ask questions by calling us toll-free with a question for Doug at 877-786-0562, or just send me your questions for Doug via email at talktome, TALKTOME, at livefromroswell.com, and I'll read them on the air. And a quick reminder to our virtual auditorium that I'm not usually available to follow every comment, so I'm often away from the auditorium for half an hour at a time. So if you want your comments entered into the discussion tonight, please be sure and use the email or the phone number listed on www.livefromroswell.com. Doug, first off, just welcome to the program tonight.
Thank you, Guy. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you for the first time.
Yeah, at least over the telephone or anything. Doug has a good mailing list. I've seen articles from in the past. And I know you're busy, so thanks for taking all the time out from work. Just really to educate us on all this tonight. It's like I said, very serious topic, eh?
Yeah, and just a clarification, I really do not have the capacity to heal anyone from dissociative disorders or any of the effects of any type of sadistic abuse, but I'm able to facilitate and to watch the Lord do what He does through human instruments, so it's really His domain.
Got it. Well, you work with, correct me if I'm wrong, survivors, or I would have to say victims of ritualistic abuse, right?
Yes, I've been working in that field since 1986 and worked with several hundred people who are varying degrees of complexity and background, dissociative disorders, from reactive DID all the way up to highly structured DID, or dissociative disorders, which is formerly known as multiple personality disorder.
And you say since 1986, how did you personally get involved in the field?
Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure to... Well, I was teaching a Bible church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, just basic teachings of the Word, exegetical studies, and I noticed there were a number of people who were not able to go free from certain encumbrances and interferences in their spiritual life and their marriage relationships, and so biblical counseling is the best I knew how at the time, and went as far as I could with that, and there were certain folks that were not being resolved, and I heard about the personality disorder in 1990, and then when I read Jim Friesen's book, Uncovering the Mystery of MPD, and started to share some of these insights that he talked about in his book, some of the people switched to the child altars. Basically said, I've been waiting for you to see if we'd be believed. Otherwise, they wouldn't start presenting some of the multiplicity until they knew for certain that they would be believed. beliefs, not told that they were crazy until having dissociative disorder.
So just more of the effects of being a pastor in what might be otherwise called a normal church.
Yeah, basically just a Bible church, non-denominational Bible church. Most of my training came from the Dallas Seminary type of background, so it was anything on this type of venue.
And you ran into people that were having much more serious problems, or what kind of issues were you running into that made you realize that there was a wall you had to get past?
Well, for example, trying to do biblical counseling with this young lady one time, and I was going to ask her to read the Bible, and we're going to start doing some renunciations based upon what we understood at the time, renunciation of some generational issues, and she reported that she was seeing the letters on the page of her Bible upside down, and it was like she was staring through a tunnel. And when we got to renouncing, trying to get her to renounce some connection with one of her family members, she froze, and she was not able to speak. So I knew we'd known this person for a number of years. I knew we were getting into something that I had not been trained for, nor was I presented any of this type of phenomenon in my seminary training.
Is it like do you liken the dissociative disorders to paranormal, spiritual, or possession, or anything like that?
No, not at all. In fact, a possession can only really refer to an unbeliever, but believers, because of chronic trauma and fragmented or dissociative states, they can be demonized and have various attachments. And so therefore you have to distinguish between the disorder that is trauma-based and then the infiltration or the contamination or attachments of the demonic, which introduces itself during the trauma.
So that comes afterwards.
Well, actually, if it's structured DID, where people abuse children from the earliest childhood, they do it in order to cause splitting and to channel in spirits and to structure them to become a weapon, basically, and often in local churches and various other venues. So I knew I was...
How do they become a weapon?
By purposely causing them to split from earliest childhood and then passing on to them various spirits or principalities and structuring them to carry out various agendas in terms of global politics and within the church to advance the satanic kingdom and ultimately prepare this world for the coming of Antichrist. No, not at all. In fact,
the term we started the show with is
really referred to
either ritual abuse or satanic ritual abuse. And I'm sure there's a lot of directions we can go. Just to catch myself, listeners, educated, can you just give me an overview of what the term satanic ritual abuse means? What is trauma-based?
Well, first of all, people who are split or multiples, as we refer to, or have dissociative identity disorder, that can come about through lack of positive nurturance, any type of childhood conflicts, or any type of mental, emotional, or spiritual abuse. If it's not ritual abuse, then the internal structure, the dividedness of the mind will be reactive. But if it is ritual, that is, there is some form of religious and spiritual connotation, religious meaning, abusing children for the purpose of indoctrination and causing them to split through trauma, then their internal DID or dissociative structure will become highly complex and structured to carry out the agenda of a local cult, or if it's on an international level, it's connected with the New World Order.
So there's groups that are doing this on purpose?
Absolutely, no question about it. It's all clearly documented in many places, both by secular and non-secular people. The Nazi, Joseph Mengele and other Nazi doctors perfected some of these techniques that are used or passed on to the CIA or Operation Paperclip to create agents that didn't know that they were agents at one level, but the deeper level is very hidden, and it's all designed to hide certain royal families of their agenda to bring in their Christ.
And what is their Christ? You said Antichrist earlier.
Yeah, they don't refer to Antichrist. They just, there's a book written the Habsburgs, which is really not it. They kind of died out in World War II. But she describes the ideology of those various Merovingian kings, you know, the Da Vinci Code kind of ideology to bring in their Christ, and they're very dedicated to this. They believe that last descendant of Aeneas, who's the progenitor of Rome, Romulus and Remus, and the foundation of Rome, they believe that this individual will, through various bloodlines, be able to emerge as one who is qualified to be the world ruler. And that's their ideology. And Marie Tanner clearly documents that in her book, The Last Descent of Aeneas.
If anybody wants to look it up, it's M-A-R-I-E, Tanner.
Yes, T-A-N-N-E-R, and Aeneas, deeper level, is very A-E-N-E-A-S, I believe. Aeneas is, it goes back to when Troy was destroyed by the Greeks, and the little grandchild that survived. The king of Troy was Aeneas, and his grandsons, Romulus and Remus, were the founders of Rome. I think Romulus killed one of the brothers of Aeneas. That's kind of how the storyline goes for the foundation of Rome. So the last descent of Aeneas would be the world ruler, the head of the revived Roman Empire, as we know, in terms of biblical prophecy.
How would just someone just know that Christ ruler is on the scene, or this person of that book?
Well, my understanding of Scripture, there are three things in 2 Thessalonians there that he's not going to be revealed until certain things take place. One is a great falling away, and then the Antichrist will set himself up in the temple of God, and the restrainer is removed, and then he will be revealed. So as long as the restrainer is doing his activity, and I don't believe, I think the church that the restrainer is operating through, with the removal of the church, the restraining ministry, the Holy Spirit will be removed, and Antichrist will be revealed. So as long as the church here, we can't pinpoint the actual identity, but I personally believe that he is alive today, and although we don't know, because the adversary probably has several wings to cover his agenda, because he's not in control of history. But I do believe he's alive today, but I personally don't believe that we can say, hey, this guy is the Antichrist.
It would be more a case of whoever steps into that position at the right time in history would or just by not so much random, but you're saying there could be many antichrists, and one will ultimately step right into the stage at that time.
Yeah, in fact, 1 John refers to there's the spirit of Antichrist, there are many antichrists, and he says there's the coming Antichrist. So you have three different ways in which Antichrist is used in 1 John. And so the adversary, since he's not in control of history, he has to have preparation. So I would imagine he has, perhaps the terminology is right, a gene pool, if you will, of some of the reserves. So when the time comes, he has his man prepared.
So you think whoever will be the Antichrist is from a specific bloodline that is on purpose breeding or grooming him might be the right side?
My belief is that the Antichrist, the false prophet, will be Nephilim. And the reason why I believe this is that in the Scripture, in the book of Revelation, it mentions that when Jesus Christ returns, that the false prophet, the Antichrist, will be removed and thrown into the lake of fire before the millennial reign of Christ, and before the great white throne judgment, which indicates to me that they're not truly fully human. Because if they're fully human, why wouldn't they stand before God at the great white throne judgment, Revelation 21? But with reference to the false prophet and the Antichrist, they are thrown into the lake of fire, to place the final judgment before the millennial reign of Christ. So that would indicate to me that they fit into the category of Nephilim. Tamber mentions in his book, Earth's Earliest Ages, that there will be three eruptions. First eruption in Genesis 6 of fallen angels to produce the offspring of Nephilim. There was a smaller, more confined, restrictive population of Nephilim in the land of Canaan prior to the Israelites' preoccupation of the land. Then he mentions in his book that just prior to the return of the Son of Man, there will be a third and final eruption of fallen angels producing the offspring of Nephilim in the earth, which I have the quotation document of his book right here in front of me. The Antichrist, the false prophet.
Oh, that's from Earth's Earliest Ages.
Right. That was written, I believe, in 1873 by a very renowned biblical scholar, G.H. quite an amazing piece in that it was written 140 years ago. But he talks about the false Christ that will be coming and the false messiahs, prior to the coming of Christ. And then he says, lastly, the characteristic features of the days of Noah are reappearing. And above all, free communication has been established between the spirits of the air and the human race with a view, apparently, to a sojourn once more of the Nephilim upon the earth. Unlawful secrets known in past times only to those few who seem to have acted as Satan's agents in directing the course of this world are now recklessly offered to all men. And he continues on, I won't read all of it to you, but he goes on the next page. He says, it thus appears that this long-expected event, that is the third and final eruption of Nephilim, will precede Satan's banishment from heaven in Revelation 12, and therefore also its results, the revival of the Roman Empire and the revelation of the man of sin. Like Enoch, the Church of Christ will be carried and called away before the earth is for a time abandoned to the Nephilim, before the fearful woes of the end. If then the fallen angels appear to be already preparing for their descent, if the great apostasy which will at last evolve the lawless one be even now spreading, who can be sure of the day or the hour?
So that involves these two themes I pick up on. Is the restrainer and the church are we still in the earth? You're saying that the restrainer mentioned in Scripture is the church?
No, in the passage there, he says, what restrains, and until he who is restraining is removed. First, the neuter gender is used as a scriptural reference to God the Holy Spirit, because we see in John the same kind of syntax and grammatical usage is used in the neuter. So there it refers to the characteristic function of God the Holy Spirit, who is, he's the only one that can restrain Antichrist. There's no one else can do that. So it has to be a person of the Godhead in this case. I believe that the indirect reference in that passage is referring to God the Holy Spirit, and then the personal pronoun is used following there in that passage. It says until he is taken out of the way. That is, until he is removed as a restraining influence on the earth. In the Great Tribulation period, the Holy Spirit is here because there will be conversions, but he's no longer restraining Antichrist. The Antichrist will be allowed to appear. So that I believe that, along with myself and the other premillennial scholars, that restraining ministry of the Holy Spirit is operative to the church as salt and light in the earth.
Which, in the second topic, that's you said premillennial, or is that a pre-tribulation rapture?
Right, yeah. Pre-tribulation, because there's, when it comes to premillennial eschatology or study of last things, you have three categories: pre-tribulation, mid-tribulation, post-tribulation views. If we understand the true doctrine of imminency, that is, there are no signs that need to occur before Jesus Christ returns for his church. The only possible scenario that accepts true imminency would be a pre-tribulation rapture. If you place a rapture anywhere beyond that, then you can no longer have imminency in terms of signs, because Israel in the last days will there be numerous signs. We have the seal judgments in Revelation 6, followed by the trumpet judgments or the bowl judgments. These all are clear signs. So if there's not a pre-tribulation rapture, then we've got to look for certain signs before the Lord return. And we don't have that, especially in the Pauline epistles. Some of the earliest circulated epistles, like 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, clearly deal with the coming of the Lord from the church.
And you said earlier that a lot of the ritualistic abuse is setting up is to help bring about this Antichrist. That's how is that a pretext back into how that works?
It's the kind of thing that it takes a whole seminar to really develop and give a biblical framework. But this interfacing, this enmeshment, this kind of lamination, if you will, of the spiritual kingdom of darkness with the individual in terms of the spirit and soul, is highly complex, very, very highly structured. And as I've worked with this for years, I've become aware that the internal architecture and structure is way beyond the intelligence of the human being. And so even though human beings are the agents, sometimes they call them programmers, what actually results is way beyond that of the intelligence of the human being. So the undoing of these things and seeing a person set free involves supernatural intervention from God. But it is, the whole theme and agenda is preparing the world for the coming of Antichrist. And plus, prior to that, the coming collapse of what we know as government to prepare the way for the Antichrist to come and resolve the big problem and unite the world of the nations under his leadership. So we're going to be in for some major shaking interfacing with the powers of interference with our establishment, and that's all part of preparing the world for the coming need to have a superhuman to come on the scene and resolve the world problems. And so there's going to be an interface there with the time in which we live and the final coming rapture, which will be a rescue according to 1 Thessalonians 1:10. A rescue from what? I've worked with this for years. 5:9, deliverance from the wrath to come. So we're in for some real perilous times, as Paul said in 2 Timothy 3:1. It's time for judgment to begin in the household of God, 1 Peter 4:17. So I think the church is asleep in the West, basically, not every church, but most of them that I've been connected with. And we're going to have a rude awakening, perhaps in the very near future, and find out that everything that we thought was good old United States of America is going to change perhaps overnight and collapse. And there are plenty of agents in place to take to take care of things when martial law is declared, if national emergency comes in. There are a lot of associated agents in place to carry out their assigned tasks, and I believe that it's going to be a real time of shaking that is coming on the church in the West and coming in the world to have a superhuman to come on.
Tell me about the agents that you say are in place.
Well, I can only speak from my experience, and there are a number of people that came to the assembly that I pastored. They were there because they were truly Christian, but they also had structured into their DID system various agendas directed towards me against the purpose of God. To dissociative states, they could be going to rituals. They were going to rituals, at night, and then coming to church on Sunday morning. Not knowing why they're so tired, sometimes wearing dark glasses and stuff. Just no way of knowing. But as we got into the internal world and doing this stuff, we began to connect with different aspects of these people's dissociative identity parts of themselves. And these agendas began to be unraveled and pieced together through the years. Quite an elaborate, pre-planned agenda to weaken the church and to bring down pastors and to come alongside leaders and to blackmail them and to do all kinds of things. Just to bring about lawlessness, basically, to break down the establishment, law and order, and everything that represents a divinely ordained establishment. Well, I can only speak from my experience.
Not targeting you personally, but you're saying there are people that...
No, I was targeted personally.
Okay.
Yeah, I was targeted, because as a pastor, especially as I started going into this work, I had a number of threats, and I had various things happening directed towards me, because I stepped into this arena.
Yeah, when you started attacking.
Well, actually dismantling the secrets and nobody's supposed to know about it, and they're all locked up behind associated amnesic walls in the internal world, and it starts coming down, and the agenda and things come out, and then that
I want to make sure I am for the sake of the listeners as well, is that in general, you're saying that there are people with what we'd call multiple personalities that are members of government and of churches that on purpose, because they're programmed to actually introduce anarchy or social destruction to the entity.
I don't say they're introduced. For example, if you watch, world leaders and politicians, and there are ones that should be very familiar to us, but because of, I'm not going to say certain things over the phone because of national things like that. But if you look at political leaders, I can tell by their eye movements, and I can tell by what they say, and then watch what they do. They're probably pre-programmed. Our more recent political figures and heads are always spouting some kind of political rhetoric, but they never follow through. And they always have certain choice words that seem to be sounding good, but there's never any follow-through. And so this is kind of a typical programmed way that people function. And I'm not saying all of them are that way. You can have just a crooked politician because it's a crooked politician. But I've watched some of these guys. It's pretty obvious, and I've seen it so many times in my counseling office. People say they equivocate, say one thing, they do another, and so this is, kind of what's going on. But I think the important thing is that the adversary knows how to maintain a network, rather than on the human level there's a full awareness of this network. He is networked, and he knows how to position things in place to serve his own agenda, rather the human agents are aware of it. I can tell by their eye movements, and I can tell by what they say,
both in churches and in politics, that are somehow programmed in.
There's no question about it. Yeah, I've worked with them and that have been in high places of government. I've worked with numerous people who were in the planning phases of the assassination of Kennedy. They have inside information. They know how the plans went down. It was definitely a conspiracy that came down out of London and worked its way down to the CIA and worked itself out to probably execution of mafia or something. So it was multi-layered, so that you could never trace it back to its planning phase. But anyone that's studied the Kennedy assassination knows very well that the magic bullet theory, of the Warren Commission is totally physically impossible. And, I saw the Pruder film, for example, before it was edited, and there were 5 shots fired, and from 3 different angles, triangulated fire. And so it was clearly a conspiracy, but you can't bring that up. So you got to narrow it down to one guy up there in the book repository. So that was all clearly an occult killing from all the information I've got from reading, as well as working with people who were in the occult and who described their various roles and connections with people with certain powers that wanted him taken out.
Why?
After his first term, it's the same reason they killed Lincoln. There were 5 people that were involved in the assassination of Lincoln. Well, John Wilson was only one. There were 5 involved. It's the same reason the National Bank back then, which is now called the National Reserve, Lincoln wanted to bring the control and issuance of currency back under the control of Congress as per the Constitution. And so he began to issue greenbacks. And because of that, he was flying in the face of the agenda of the national banks and maintaining control of the issue of currency. So he was taken out for that particular stand against the national bank. 5 shots fired. Kennedy, I was told, I don't remember the source on this, but after his first term, he mentioned if he's reelected, one of his first things on his agenda was to bring the control and issuance of currency out from the control of the Federal Reserve and bring it back under the control of Congress. Well, you're running into the same powers that went after
there's various layers to all this. You've heard of Bilderbergers. They are just various national, international leaders that meet for a secret agenda. The first one is the Bilderberg Hotel, I believe, somewhere in France. I forgot the name. But they meet annually, highly top secret. People guard their relations, machine guns. Nobody knows for sure what to talk about. But you have world leaders, heads of state, highly wealthy, people who attend these Club of Rome, and their whole agenda is they believe that the oligarchy are running into the same power. The oligarchy of plutocrats, that is, these leaders who believe that they're the enlightened ones, they have the right to rule, and their desire is to bring the whole world under the one world system of government, economics, and ultimately the one world religion. So it's spiritually driven, although it is an ideology that governs a number of these heads of state.
And we're not taking a break at the bottom of the hour like we often do. I just definitely want to remind people that you can pose a question and jump in on this conversation by calling toll-free 877-786-0562 or email me at talktome@livebrowsers.com, and I'll read that on the air. We will take a break at the top of this hour, but we're going to keep on continuing with Doug right now. And you've drawn a picture. I found you're very good at speaking matter-of-factly about things that I or a lot of guests may have only heard of. When you say the Bilderbergers support the New World Order, so you definitely believe that there's and you worked with the people that were programmed to be part of the New World Order.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no question about it. In fact, people talk about conspiracy theory. I said, you know what? The onus is upon those who call themselves historians to prove it's a theory, because I've got numerous scriptures that talk about the wicked plot against the righteous. Psalm 2, many other psalms. Psalm 83. Obviously, when you have more than two conspiring to wipe out the nation of Israel or wipe out the righteous, you got a conspiracy going. Well, that's the human side of things. The kings of the earth take their stand against the Lord and His anointed. They conspire as one tumultuous throng, it says in Hebrew. So that's not a theory. It's a biblical fact. So, whether people understand it or not is an issue with them and their understanding of biblical revelation as well as history. There's plenty of good historians that have documented this reality.
Do you affirm, like the books Rule by Secrecy and the Jim Morris line of thinking on this? I mentioned that because I think a lot more of our audience is familiar with that.
Yeah, I haven't read those. I read Mr. Webster years ago, and I read, in fact, people talk, James Robeson, he wrote a book in 1799, Proofs of Conspiracy, and Daniel Ryder wrote a book that came and interviewed us called The Cover of the Century, Satanic Ritual, Crime, and the World Conspiracy by Daniel Ryder, Fourth Reich of the Rich by Des Griffin, which is a very excellent book. Another one is The World Order by William Still. It's very brief, but it's a good overview. It doesn't deal with the ID. Another one that I just noticed that is going to be released again is called The Omega Conspiracy, Satan's Last Assault on God's Kingdom by I.D. Thomas.
So that is being re-released?
Yeah, it's supposed to be out sometime this spring. And that's a real good one because he really understands and grasps the whole context of Genesis 6, 1 through 4, and being played out as the final drama in the end times.
You affirm, talk about that for a second, because I know a lot of bars in my field talk about Genesis 6, fallen angels cross free.
I haven't read those.
And that goes right into the ritualistic topic.
Yeah, well, these people, these authors are not talking about the ritual abuse side. They're just really dealing with the historical and the biblical. But Satan's Last
ties it together, I think, very well. Excuse me. Called the Omega Conspiracy.
On the hybridization, Kelly writes about Daniel 2, chapter 2, saying that people use that in reference to the crossbreeding, that it says the clay will not mix with sun.
You know, the whole context of Genesis. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. 1, 2, 4. Yeah, actually, it doesn't say it will not adhere. There is a mixture, and if you go back and I'll get the passage and I'll read it. So, and I heard Chuck Missler discuss this one time. I thought it was a very excellent consideration that he made, talking about the 10 toes that is the final configuration of the revival of the empire in terms of the image of Daniel 2. He says there in Daniel 2:42, and the toes of the feet were partly of iron, partly of pottery, so some of the kingdom will be strong, part of the brittle phenomenon. And in that you saw the iron mixed with common clay. They will not combine together. They will combine with one another in the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. So when it says combine to one another, the word combine means intermarriage. And one of the agendas of the ruling monarchies of Europe, those that carry the Merovingian ideology of Gnostic Christ, is that through the right combination of bloodlines, they'll eventually emerge the last descendant of Aeneas, or the rule of the coming king, Roman emperor. And so this mixture there in that passage that we saw is not a human. In other words, this not combined with the seed of men. That would seem to indicate by inference a third eruption, as Pember says, of fallen angels cohabiting with women, producing Nephilim in the last stage of world history, leading up to the coming of the Son of Man, Jesus Christ. In fact, if you read Revelation chapter 9, you see those very grotesque creatures that are coming out of the abyss. The question is, who are they? If these are the disembodied spirits of Nephilim that have been imprisoned, or if they are the fallen angels that have been locked up in prison, as we see in 2 Peter and Jude, if they're released and they are manifesting themselves in this very grotesque way, then maybe Revelation 9 is not so metaphorical or symbolic as some would say, but it could be a very horrendous event that God is going to use to judge those who have rejected Jesus Christ.
Do you believe that intermingling is going on now, or
yes, I do.
Still to come?
Yes, no, I believe it's already going on. I believe it's been going on at least since World War II.
That there's I guess biblical scholars would use the phrase Nephilim,
right?
A hybrid of angels.
That's correct. Yeah, I believe that's true. I remember working with a member of the royal family in Europe. Member of the royal family in the House of Windsor. This particular daughter, who looks very much like her father, very tall and blonde. Her husband was an officer, out there in the west coast of California. I forgot what the name was. Vandenberg. And he's also had access to the Pentagon and had pretty high clearance. And as I began to work with this woman, traveling out to see her and doing work, kind of burrowed down a lot of the various defenses, barriers that had purposely been put in place to hide her bloodline. When we got down into some of this, very interesting things, she began to talk about Area 51.
Is this the person that came to you from counsel? How do you know this?
Oh yeah, I've been sought out, all over the United States. So yeah, they had called me from Nevada, wanted to meet with me, so I started meeting with her. But she told me about being taken out to Area 51, and she says, everyone talks about Area 51, which we know it's a real thing, even though the government denies it. I remember working stealth planes have been developed, the royal family, in that particular facility. She says, people talk about Area 51, but what most people don't know is that there's Area 52, and the people that work in Area 51 don't even know about Area 52. I said, what do you mean Area 52? He says, well, that's the Nephilim project. He said, said, that's below Area 51. And here she said, you have to have a certain kind of clearance. And when we got in past some of her dissociative defenses, she says, I know the number. I can go anywhere. I can go into Area 51. All I got to do is give my number. And so what she did, she gave her husband this number. He checked it out in the database. This number was higher than anything that he knew of in the Pentagon, and that it was the very number was assigned to those that could not even be named. It was a very top clearance, and he verified that the number that his wife had was not only way beyond his, but beyond anything that was allowed to even give a name to be assigned to.
Did you just walk up to Area 51, recite a number?
No, there are tunnels. You don't walk right there.
Okay.
There are underground tunnels and stuff. There's tunnels. She told me, I haven't been there, but she mentioned that from Las Vegas that she's taken a 10-minute ride from Las Vegas right into Rachel Groom Lake, which is about an hour and 4-minute drive by car. That she was transported there with a 10-minute underground ride on a high-speed, very quiet rail system. Whatever that is, I have no way of knowing, but that's what she described to me. She is very highly structured. I know the number. I can go in all kinds of. It was created by her head to state. So what she did, Canaanite culture, Babylonian culture.
Okay, you mentioned that you had worked past some of her.
This number is higher.
How does that work? What are you actually dealing with? Got someone who's
the very number was assigned to those that could not even. Yeah, it's very complex. I don't know that I could really describe that guy on the phone because when you're dealing with just the phenomenal association itself, the person has a number of psychological or human defenses. You have to be able to identify those defenses and do a protocol of certain questions and answers like begin to see how the structure, defensive structure is put in place and begin to work. Decontaminate some of these areas from spiritual attachments and help the person get to the trauma base and to help bring these various associated aspects of their identity out of the past and into the present so that they can begin to reclaim our life. Very quiet rails gradually be restored to function. We have a very long and drawn up process. That's what she described. I can imagine. She's very highly structured.
And a lot of this happens on purpose. Or it was to confuse when they're young.
If it's ritual abuse, going back to your first question, then it's always purposely done to cause splitting, so that what they call programming and structuring can be done to carry out an agenda within that particular cult, or often a more wider or broader ideology, what I refer to as the world order.
It's just like you take an average 3 or 5-year-old, and are you just kind of playing the odds when you do this to a lot of people that some of them are going to rise to power, or some of them are going to want to cause their government?
My experience is that they have to be born in a certain bloodline to carry the generational base of power, help like usually, depending on the particular agenda, the family wants, they call it an inheritance. And so to maintain the power structure or the family inheritance, these family spirits, these principalities that are passed on to their children, yeah, I would say that's a curse, but from their perspective, they call it the inheritance, So, yeah, there are curses, there are a number of things that would, the whole thing has to be, the whole area of association, dividedness and fragmentation, is like a reservoir, a repository where these principalities can attach themselves and to basically carry out a stealth agenda to an amnesic presenter. And that is just what is going on. It's going on in our churches and in all kinds of ways. And a lot of these people don't even know that they're agents because they're amnesic to the fact that they even have this history. Helping them reclaim their life.
And what triggers them to begin to work out the disorder?
Well, it varies with different people. Usually depression. They're very depressed. They feel very empty, or they're dissatisfied with their spiritual life, or unfulfilled in normal relationships. I think most women just enter because of depression, and very severe depression. Some are suicidal. People, I would say that's a curse. Try to commit suicide in mental hospitals and everything. They've had problems, but most often it's been misdiagnosed. The whole area is psychotic, or they got bipolar, or they're schizophrenic, and repository, depending on how clinicians often misdiagnose them, carry out a stealth. The ones I work with to an amnesic presenter. Some of them have varying degrees of what is going on, of history of going on in our mental institutions in all kinds of ways.
And you're saying there is a real thing, that they're bipolar.
I don't know. I mean, I only work with what I work with, so I'm not qualified to answer that because I'm not a clinician. I just know that I've had people come to me say that this sounds have been diagnosed and it's full-blown DID. Well, it varies. That doesn't mean every disorder out there is DID. I just, if they've had chronic abuse in their childhood, then the only way they could have survived is to split, because DID is really a childhood form of PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. Because when children are overwhelmed by chronic trauma and abuse, they split. If it's an adult, they don't split. They just, they present PTSD, like our troops coming back from Iraq. They've had problems.
When a child, is this just any trauma, like physical or sexual abuse, or the neighbor's house explodes and his parents midnight, or alien abduction and things like that? I know there's a lot of overlap, I think, in the alien abduction SRA.
Yeah, well, anything that's, an acute trauma is not going to produce DID. It has to be chronic trauma. And chronic trauma, or lack of positive nurturance, or chaos and conflict, or all of the above, can produce fragmentation or splitting in a child. And so they'll organize into either a random DID structure in their mind, or structured if it's cult perpetrated. These people, when they begin to present their different problems, they don't often know what's going on. What I do is I just do history and do some generational prayer work, and announcing and breaking anything that might represent the sins of the fathers. They don't split. If they're a DID and I begin to do some generational prayer work just to kind of open the door a little bit, it'll open things up big time.
So when
because I wanted to make sure that I got the few, really the few folks through that I've been committed to me for a long time, and seeing them get through is really important to me. So I use a lot of discretion now before I accept anyone. If they're not committed or in a good local church somewhere where they can have support, I will not accept, any assignments. They have to have somebody who's committed to walk with them through this, or I don't accept it. So, yeah, in the past, we've had seminars, we had people who want Germany and South Africa. knowing. So that it is very hidden by the very nature of the disorder itself. And then another track is I have a friend who grew up in India, and I invited him to sit in with a session with me one time. He's a third or fourth generation Christian from India. He's highly trained. He knows Dr. Jones not personally. He's traveled all over the world. He's worked with torchbearers. like Dr. Colin Ross, who's a secular Jewish psychiatrist, he said this, that when he did demographic studies on population, he said he saw that about 10% of the population of various areas he tested showed dissociative symptoms. You take 10% of that 10%, you would have full-blown DID according to the range of experience. He asked the question, what is the secret agent in testing? So if you took 1% of the population over to do secret guns and carry out a 360 operation stage, 1% were construction DID, you'd have enough to do some pretty significant secret agents. So even 1%, they're going to be dispersed and centered in that which is most strategically important to the adversary. Like the government, church, or absolutely, yeah, government, yeah. And the places where there could be, the adversary can carry on his agenda without necessarily the person even knowing fully all that's going on.
Yeah, are people doing things and then they don't remember doing them?
Oh yeah, I mean, in other words, if they switch into another personality state, the host person will be completely amnesic. They call it lost time. For example, I was just talking to a person here where I live who's just gone through 4 years of, it wasn't with me, it was another person. She was abused by her grandfather, ritually abused, and she was telling me that she had an altar that was trained to be an assassin. She didn't even know it. The way she found out is that her boyfriend wanted to take her out shooting. She said, "Where do you want to go?" She says, "Well, I don't know. I've never been shooting." I said, "Come on, we'll go out. I'll teach you how." So they go out there, and he brings a gun. She never shot. She never handled a gun before. So he shows her. They set up the targets, and then as she was telling me the story, she said, I don't know how much time went by, but I was the last thing I remember is my boyfriend saying, "How did you do that?" And she said, "How did I do what?" I said, "How did you get? I mean, you got everything in the 10 circle." Oh yeah, I mean, right in the 10, the whole push is right in the bullseye. She says, "I don't know. I don't even remember shooting time." So the host person was totally amnesiac. When that gun was handed to her, she switched into a trained assassin part of her, and she emptied the clip and put them all in the tanner. Ritually abused.
This involved a period of her life, an altar, to where when she was in that other personality, she was there months or longer.
Oh yeah. I and got past the presenter into the core. So, I mean, you're talking about this kind of structuring. You try to explain this to the average, fundamentalist preacher, they're going to think you're from Mars, guy. I mean, where are you coming from? First of all, I remember talking with, many people know, what's his name? Dr. Neil Anderson. He's written Bondage Breaker, a number of books. Really a fine guy. I was at a seminar with him one time, and I read his third book. This is about 10 years ago. Those that have heard Neil speak or read his books, like I mentioned, Bondage Breaker, Victory Over Darkness. It's still very good reading by Dr. Neil Anderson, former engineer, now serving the Lord full time. But I read one of his books and 2 chapters on MPD, and I said, this is not the way it works. So, and what you decide is, seminar was had 100. What you just described, I mean, there's some truth in it, but very simple. It's not how it works. And so I told him how it works, and what's going to be involved. Neil told me, he said, if it's that much work, if you got to do that, who's got time for it? I don't. I said, you're going to tell people like me and other people out there that are trying to help these people. And he was very frustrated. He walked away. So, I saw him 2 years later. He got up before 800 people and he apologized for making statements about MPD at the time. He says, I was in kindergarten then, and now I'm about second grade. So please forgive me for my ignorance and my presumption statements. Dr. Neil Anderson. And this is a guy that's a doctor. I mean, he's a guy that works with counseling and travels all over the world. And I went up to him after I said, Neil, I said, the very fact that you humbled yourself and made an apology was so healing to those multiple that you offended 2 years ago. So I just want to thank you for demonstrating that humility. He looked at me. He says, I can't afford former engineer and now that was his advice. So I appreciate that because there's so many people in the church. If they don't, I'm dealing with it here now. If so beyond their ability to comprehend, they say, well, that's this psychology or that's Christianized psychology. And where do you find this in the Bible? They have no framework for it, and so they go into denial. So, I can understand it, but it's better to take a place of humility and find out from the people involved what is their story. Let them speak, and when they speak, they have a lot to say, but they're not going to speak unless they believe they're going to be believed. I saw him 2 years later. He got up actually you mentioned somebody talking about during a break, where is he at the time? He says, I was in kindergarten then. How are you going to you had some topics on that? Someone challenged me with that. If somebody does, I'll send, because I can't put out my email because I can't answer. I already have more than I can deal with now. I will send you 2 articles, maybe 3 articles that I wrote because people in churches were wanting to know what is the biblical framework for this. So I wrote actually 3 articles, one called The Brokenhearted, the other called Pulverized Saints, where I use, I go to Scripture just so I can see a biblical framework. This is described in the Bible, although it's not specifically spoken about. Where do you find this in the Bible? Like he came to heal the brokenhearted and to bind up their sorrows in Isaiah 61, 1-3. The word brokenhearted, the Hebrew shazer, this is the plural. It's a comprehensive term. It means to be shattered. What is their story? He came to heal the shattered heart. Well, it doesn't say MPD, but MPD is, it is a shattering of the mind. It is a brokenness that is to the maximum. And in fact, in the Luke account in the King James, the Greek there is to be represents polarization. Then on pulverized saints, as I mentioned earlier, there's the Hebrew term dakah, which means to be pulverized. I will send you 2 articles. It means to be maybe 3. The Hebrew dakah means it can be panic on one side or shattering on the other side. And so it has kind of a dual range of description of someone who Word doc, so all that you can just send it with your email as a Word document, and they can just open it up and print it out.
Yeah, that'd be great. That reminds me of an email I had to
I will send you articles to be, it's not Hebrew.com means it can be panning on one side or shattering on the other side. And so it has kind of
okay, hi. I believe I used to have DID, and that God led me through a long process of healing, in which I gained full access to memories of your trauma, and I feel they have been integrated and merged really well. I'm a Christian, and I believe God has healed me of MPD, and I did it well. Sometimes when I feel a lack of faith in God, I will feel scared, and I start worrying, I do the right thing, and perhaps I'm not healed, and I fear that there's some unknown person in the framework of biblical scripture, and I feel terrified that I am really not healed. My question is it normal for people that are recovered from MPD to sometimes feel scared that they are recovered, and then someone else runs out into their presence? Right. And second question, just the idea that I'm not healed feels traumatic.
And that would be a Word doc, so all that you can just
any idea what I feel
your email as a Word document. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can empathize with that, and I don't know why she feels that way unless I was personally interviewing her. But, in a situation like that, just the fear itself, there's a way to trace that and to see where it's coming from, the message is there. And if there's some pockets that need to be excavated a little bit to release that fear, that's pretty easily done if somebody knows what they're doing. So she's a good counselor, just to embrace that and follow that fear back to the source and say, okay, what is the message? Why do I feel this way? And it may take her back to some area that needs to be resolved. It doesn't mean that God hasn't done a tremendous work of healing. It doesn't mean that the work that has been done is not valid. It just means there's some pockets here and there that need to be excavated and for her to be released. That's not unusual. People coming out of this history. So fear can be a doorway back to reclaiming an area of her life that she may not have reclaimed. Or it could be just an area she may need to stay in terms of spiritual warfare. And I don't know why he'll come to the Lord or a combination of both. But so it's not unusual to have these situations like that. I think that as you grow in the Lord and you get more confident to trace that and who you are in your relationship with the Lord, that helps. But if there's any remaining dissociation, be afraid of it. It doesn't invalidate what she's already gone through. It just means that there may need to be a little bit more excavation to bring whatever's surfacing to resolution. Just embrace that and follow that fear back to the source. Paragraph. What is the message?
On one of the documents you sent me, ritualistic abuse, the Chapstone Report, there's a statement that caught my eye. That the Christian church must become more aware of the reality of ritualistic abuse. How are you or others working to that end? And frankly, from a pastor point of view, like say you've got a small town church pastor that doesn't feel like this is going on, therefore he's not worried about it, it doesn't enter into his thinking. Like, why should he care?
Well, the spiritual level of each person is going to determine their ability to even have an aptitude to go into this realm. I mean, if they already got their mind made up, it's not relevant. Grow in the Lord. They can believe about Antichrist, they can believe about New World Order and teach it as a doctrine. But the real question, where does that intersect people's lives? And, demographically, we have 30 to 35% of all women in the United States that have had some form of sexual abuse. Now, if that was chronic in childhood, they're going to have some major issues that need to be resolved, and very often dissociative issues. So if you're a pastor in a local church and you're really interested in seeing people restored, you're first going to have to face the reality of this rather than just think don't know is fact.
Do you have
If they're humble, they're willing to learn and listen, and maybe have to have a bigger God box. Maybe their whole God paradigm needs to be enlarged to accept the magnitude of this reality. Different levels of sexual abuse in their childhood.
If they didn't come to you originally, do you have a way of either documentation or anything?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I'll overwhelm them, the guy.
Yeah.
I can overwhelm them from many different angles, but the question is that help? So the best thing to do is try to find out where they are and to measure it out a little bit until they can adjust and come in and have the capacity to grasp the culture that we're talking about.
So I guess generally, unless a pastor, I mean, you said you started when you ran into counseling problems with people that you just couldn't get past.
That's right, yeah. Just hit an impasse.
And rather than write the person off and say, God bless you, I guess you actually began to pray about what is wrong or how can I help this person further. Is that what started it?
Well, that was involved, yes. I got informed. I mean, I heard about, the dividedness and how you find they're willing to learn that disorder. But my first thought is, where do you find this in the Bible? I should go there. Maybe there's what I read, Dr. Jim Friesen's book. It was 1991 called Uncovering the Mystery of MPD. I just was reading through it. It was making sense to me, but I didn't know. So I shared some of the things I was reading with some of the folks that I was stuck with. And I was reading from the book about different parts coming out, child altars and that. And there's a woman in front of me who's in her 40s, and we've known her for 10 years. A very intelligent person, professional. She's an RN. And I look over at her, and she's sitting with her knees up in her chest and sucking her thumb and rocking and looking at me with these cute little eyes. And I mean, I've known this person for years. I said, have I met you before? She says, hi, my name is Sarah, and I like ducks and ice cream. She said, really, Sarah? How old are you? She said, 6. Well, that was the shock. How come I never met you before? I said, because we didn't think we believed. By now you're reading that book. We believe that you will believe us. My first thought is, what do you find in the Bible? And that journey began. What I read there, it's been a pretty awesome journey, with her and many others. I just was reading through it. So, I mean, I could say, well, where do you find what's in front of me? Where do you find that in the Bible? I didn't have time. I mean, I'm talking to an adult that's in her 40s talking to me like a 6-year-old. And we knew her character. We knew